So Menopause Mastery. And so welcome ladies to Menopause Mastery, 3 secrets to harnessing the power of menopause. Today, I'm going to show you how to harness the secret power of menopause without drugs, medical procedures, or feeling like an old lady. But I have a confession. This is really about how to finally become your most amazing, beautiful, authentic self that you were meant to be. Of course, I'll be doing this in the context of mastering menopause. These are my menopause queens there, harnessing my Halloween event to my Halloween vibe with all the orange. So if you're someone who feels like menopause has to be awful, painful, stressful, or depressing, but you refuse to be a victim of your body, hormones, or society and are ready to take back your life, you're in the right place. I'm Maria. You guys all know me, but for the replay people, not everyone knows me. I'm Maria, owner of Pause Alchemy of Women, menopause coach, women's empowerment mentor, certified herbalist, and podcast host. I know you've seen it. Abby has been on it. At the end of this presentation, I'll be making an offer to work with me directly. So please stay tuned until the end. Let's see, how do you go back to the Zoom room? That's a good question. Abby, how do you get back to the Zoom room? Do you know?
You stop share. It says,
stop the share. Okay, thank you. So ladies, first I'd like to share why I'm obsessed with menopause, where I feel like you all really know that already. But a few years ago, I started talking to different women and hearing some issues. I had a friend who, and I've talked about this probably on the podcast, but I had a friend who she got a hysterectomy in her 30s as a cancer preventative. And then her husband was in grad school on the other coast. And so she was not having any sex and didn't really think about it, didn't really get any information from her doctors or anything about what happens when you go through surgical menopause. And, you basically go through the whole process like right then. And that could have a lot of serious ramifications, including physical changes vaginally. And that's what happened to her. And so she found that when she went to see her husband, that she was unable to have sex. And she was very upset. She's in her mid-30s. And so that was really hard. Another woman had a similar thing, but it was just she was getting older. She went through menopause, not surgically, just regular menopause. And she was concerned about getting a partner again and what might happen. And I don't know if all of you have seen the interview I did with Shay. She went through surgical menopause as well and didn't get any information. Like there was nothing. Like she was in her 30s and the doctors are like, okay, we're just going to take your uterus out. And like a lot of women don't even know like what happens if you keep your ovaries, what happens if you don't, And so that's more of a medical thing. But even I'm realizing like there's not a lot of information about menopause. And so I started to get really pissed off about it. Honestly, I started to get really mad for the women and, mad at the patriarchy and why are women's issues seen as gross or not important or scary and mysterious. And so I started to kind of get on this soapbox about menopause and women, and I was inspired to help other women not feel alone, not feel uninformed, old, irrelevant, or invisible as we often can as we get a little older. So let's see if I can share my screen again. A lot of technology. I don't know why I did that going back and forth. So here we are. So menopause, so what you're saying is that I'm to look forward to 10 years of hell followed by death. Am I missing anything? Right. And this is written as a little bit of a joke, as a meme, but this is kind of what we're up against a little bit, in what we're presented with as women. And so it's going to be this big, awful thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. It also is shown as a weakening of ourselves into a final downward spiral of life, which is really depressing. But I told you I loved playing with the Canva, so I can't stop with the Canva. You might not realize this, but there's a real prejudice against women who are getting older. And these are all my ladies laughing, including a coyote, because of course you realize this. But in Japan, for instance, until recently, there was no word for hot flash in Japanese. And konenki, which I'm sure which sounds a lot like my dog's name, which you call him Frankie Konenki. I'm only realizing now as I say it out loud. Konenki, which my Japanese is non-existent, but it basically translates loosely to a change in energetic season over the years. So they treat it more as like an imbalance of you getting a little older and getting a little bit unbalanced. And so maybe that means hormonally, maybe not. And there's some reasons for this, of course. They talk about Japanese women really having less symptoms. Now, this could be because in Japanese culture, talking about things like gynecological health isn't exactly normal or what people do. And then there's things like lifestyle, eating a lot of vegetables, focus on exercise, and soy. And then also this piece of like, I feel like the Japanese are maybe taught, complain about that kind of stuff. But it does seem to be actually that they're not experiencing the symptoms like how in Western cultures we are. There's also something called the grandmother hypothesis. And these are all my little grandmas. I hope to be, I don't have any children, so I hope to be the grandma in the middle. I'm going to have to get crazier with my dressing. But the grandmother hypothesis is because often in other cultures outside of like the US and Europe, or maybe some parts of Europe, that are more traditional, they put a big focus on older women because the grandmother is who takes care of the family. The grandmother, in Japan would be the matriarch of the family. And so she's really important. And, the woman's role is not just to give birth and then like you're useless. And so my feeling and this grandmother hypothesis is that in these other cultures where that the older people are more revered, they don't have this, like, it's kind of almost a relief, right? Because you don't have to be reproducing anymore. And in some this is from Christiane Northrup, she's a great doctor. In some Native American cultures, menopausal women were felt to retain their wise blood rather than shed it cyclically, and were therefore considered to be more powerful than menstruating women. A woman could not be a shaman or a wise woman until she was past menopause. And so this is really interesting to me. And I read about this in Mayan culture, Cree and Iroquois in Native American, the Maori in New Zealand, that this is really something that you can't be all wise and powerful until you're past this time. And so, I'm sorry, I'm going to undo this a second and go back to stop and share because I want to see if I can change the view. Okay. I want to mess up my very fancy Canva, my Canva thing that I'm so proud of. So here we go. Speaker view and share screen. Okay. Let's try. Oh, I don't think it worked. Anyway.
Maria, you press the little, can you see at the top left of you, the little minimize button?
Oh, okay. Then there's nobody. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Abby is my, somehow Abby, who does not have a smartphone, is now my technology guru. I love it. So getting back, so this very powerful woman is saying, are we being made to feel this way out of a fear of power, of our power at this time? So that's a theory. And to not get too deep into my ideas of the patriarchy, although you're all women, so you probably agree, you know, in our society, it seems like men specifically are kind of afraid of this mysterious power that we have. We can get pregnant. Our cycles with the follow of the moon, we're very attuned to water. Women will start to cycle together. You know, it's a little kind of crazy what can happen with our bodies, you know? So sometimes I feel like it's our society saying, being afraid of the power of the menopausal woman and kind of wanting to squash us down by having us focus on our looks and focus on all the things that aren't going well in a way that if going well means you look 20. And so let's talk about symptoms for a second. So that's my little witchy lady, my sexy witch. Like I said, I'm harnessing the power of not only menopause, but also Halloween. So if you ladies wouldn't mind typing in the chat, if you can access that, you know, what sort of symptoms have you experienced? Are you most afraid of? Have you just heard? If you'd like to type in the chat for a moment, anything. Oh yeah, Mara says pelvic pain that's been going on for a long time, but easing. Yeah. Most afraid of low sexual desire. All of them scare me, Itai. Sounds like a nightmare. Yeah, all good here. My mom gets, you know, she's my mom. And so if I'm in menopause, she's most definitely past that. Well, thank you ladies for sharing. Yeah, this are very real. Either ideas or symptoms or fears. Oops. So how do I get out of this, Abby? Oh man, technology. Okay, so we're gonna come to secret one. This little puppy, I love puppies. So sleep is your most important defense. Now, this may sound like, okay, we're just gonna say sleep, right? But some of the symptoms that you mentioned and some of the ones that you didn't mention, like, for instance, mood swings, brain fog, fatigue, low libido, Abby mentioned, depression and anxiety. I wrote on here low libido twice, so that must have been important to me, which I've been known to experience. A lot of these can be solved by sleep, right? So it seems like a simple thing, like, oh, just get more sleep, you know, but that is one of the biggest complaints that women going through perimenopause talk about. And so, like, I'll just speak for myself. When I don't get sleep, I mean, if I was going to have a mood swing, I sure as hell I'm going to have a mood swing if I haven't slept, right? And then something like brain fog, if you're not feeling well rested, your brain is obviously going to be a little more cloudy. Obviously, fatigue that comes from not sleeping often, and even things like low libido, because things that I would consider, you know, a way that what I would consider low libido is if I don't want to have sex, but often it's because I'm tired. And then, of course, depression and anxiety are going to be increased if you don't sleep. And so I find this to be one of the most important things, because even if you're just cranky from not sleeping and you get a hot flash, that's like a way to get on sort of an anxiety downward spiral, really. And so some tips are the regular ones, you know, like no electronics before bed. And that, you know, I'm not very strict with myself about that. And I really should be, because I personally notice, like, especially if I watch a movie, my partner put a gigantic television in our bedroom last time when I was in the United States, and I haven't forced them to take it out. But if he wants to watch a movie, I forget it if it's like a, some sort of war movie, or he's on this like kick of Vikings. um, but really just looking at your screen, like I'm always like, oh, I just want to look at one more thing. Oh, I just want to change the music. Oh, I just, and so it really affects our circadian rhythms. Then, of course, being mindful of caffeine. I love coffee. I love black tea. I love green tea. And so just like noticing how that affects your body. And some people really seem to not be affected by it for sleep. But, it really is affecting our system. So being mindful of caffeine and maybe just like switching it to the morning. I used to make fun of people that had decaffeinated coffee. I was like, why would you bother? But now I'm an old lady decaf drinker. Exercising, but exercising early in the day, watching what you eat and when. I think there's like a big push toward this intermittent fasting, and especially in regards to menopausal symptoms. And I could not fast during the day because my blood sugar is too wonky, and I have a fast metabolism, and I'm always hungry. So I wouldn't do it during the day, but stopping to eat several hours before you go to bed, and especially noticing, like, I am from New Jersey. And for those of you who know me, I love pizza. Actually, last time I saw Mora, we got a giant pizza and had some wine. That's a different story. But also being mindful of your alcohol intake. And just noticing, like, pizza actually makes me not be able to sleep. And so it's interesting just to take note of that. Yes, pizza rules and wine, Maura says. Yeah, I love it. It's great. But I need to have pizza earlier in the day and maybe day drink. You do you. And so just noticing that. I like to really give myself a lot of time to wind down before I go to bed. So if you're someone who tries to like do a bunch of work and talk to your husband and do all this stuff and watch a movie and then immediately get to bed, and you are finding yourself either not being able to fall asleep or waking up in the middle of the night, honestly, winding down has been one of the things. Like, I need to get to bed, like get in my bed at like 8 o'clock and read. I do a little journal, maybe do some tarot cards. I like to make lists of anything I'm thinking of. So if I have a bunch of stuff to do the next day, I write that down. I've been doing this since I was a kid, because as my mom would attest, I did not sleep as a kid. I was always up reading books until 4 o'clock in the morning, or thinking, or, so writing lists and getting the stuff out of your head so you don't have to keep putting it over and over again in your mind. I also do that before meditation. I find it really helpful. Thinking about your stress level, because a lot of times, like a lot of women, especially during menopause, will talk about waking up between 3 or 4 in the morning, the witching hour, if you will. Sometimes that has to do with a cortisol spike. So I've talked about this before in my cortisol podcast, but so in the morning, cortisol is coming up in the morning, kind of peaks midday, and is supposed to be going down just as, oh my God, what am I blanking? Oh God, what am I blanking? Oh, and the melatonin is coming up as the night comes, right? And then melatonin is supposed to be going down, and then cortisol is rising again. But so if you have cortisol that is kind of wonky, it might be spiking at 3 o'clock in the morning and waking you up. And then things like having a cool bedroom, whether your husband likes it or not. Luckily, Alberto doesn't care if it's freezing in there. Nice pajamas and sheets, an eye mask, earplugs, whatever makes you feel comfortable is so important. And then I always talk about yoga nidra. My favorite is Ali Boothroyd. She, yoga nidra is a form of, it's not actual physical yoga. It's a form of meditation that you kind of bring attention to the different parts of your body, and they have all different types. It's so good for your nervous system. So even if you don't do it at night, I do it in the morning actually, and it calms your nervous system to get your cortisol in check. I also do Michael Seeley meditations. It's a sleep meditation. I think my mom has done them too. They're super good. And I come from a lifetime of not being able to sleep that well. And I've also started taking magnesium, which really seems to help. Herbs, I also have a podcast on herbs or herbs, depending on where you're from, like valerian, passion flower, chamomile, lavender, and California poppy, as well as reishi mushroom. So I have a lot of places where you can look for my my herbal suggestions on that. So that's sleep, but really foundational for everything. That's when our body heals. So very important. And then secret two, let me just check this chat. Do some work on my sleep ritual, Abby says. Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? I just got a message saying that my internet is unstable, which is always fun to hear. Let me know if you can't hear me. So secret number two, acceptance of all the things. And so what I mean by that is really all the things, acceptance equals freedom. So once we can learn to accept everything, how it's going on, you have to like it, but accepting that certain things are the way they are, or it is what it is, as my mom hates that phrase, and so do I. So things like we will get older. We will no longer be able to reproduce at a certain point. Our hormones will fluctuate and some of them will decline. Our bodies and faces will change. We may not be able to do things or do them in the same way as we did. And guess what? We're going to die. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer, but that is a real thing. And I feel like sometimes there is a fear of that. And that is where a lot of the rejection comes in. And, so what to all of these things? So what if you can't do things the way you did? Do them a different way or do something else. We've been aging for our whole lives. Once you're born, you start aging. This doesn't mean that it's the end. Some things are a relief, I find relief in the idea that I won't have my period after having it for so far 35 years almost. And I am in perimenopause, so I'm sure I'll get it for more years. The pressures of baby making. I don't have any children and I live in a Latin American country, and people are always like, why would you do that? Even in the US, I get that a lot. And focusing too much on appearance, on attracting a man or getting a man, attracting a man, maybe even sex in general, you don't feel like thinking about anymore. And society's pressures of being a certain way. No more period, I'm referring to, Maura says. And also giving so many fucks. I'm reading this book that I will do a review on soon. I've talked about it before. It's called What Fresh Hell Is This? And one of the things that she talks about is that when you're postmenopausal, you don't give any fucks. When you are perimenopausal, all your fucks come home to roost. And I find this to be super hysterical because it's just like everything starts bothering you. And the more that you can either accept or reject in a way that's accepting. I know that doesn't sound to make any sense, but like there's things that you're putting up with and you're like, hey, I'm accepting that I'm not going to put that up with that anymore. And being a little more firm in yourself is a way to get to the not giving the fucks, I think. And so secret number 3, be who you are. And so that sounds really simple, but how often do we avoid truly being exactly who we are, right? So I am in the process of recovering from being a lifelong people pleaser. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings and I don't want to make anyone feel bad. And I want to make sure everything's okay, which is nice and also can be detrimental to like doing the things that I feel like I need to do for myself. You can avoid being who you are to impress people. You can avoid it to hide your quote unquote faults or imperfections that you deem that you have, or other people maybe have told you that you have, and to make others more comfortable. And so have you taken the time to really know yourself, you know, your needs, your desires, what things are actually yours, and what do you get from other people. So who are you? um, sorry, I'm looking at two different pieces of paper. So, you know, just this piece of like, and I talk about this before, what's mine and what's outside. And I think that perimenopause is a really powerful time because you get all of this sort of menopausal rage, I guess you could call it. You get some of that. And I feel like this is a wonderful time to say, well, who am I and what do I believe? And how do I feel about getting older? How do I feel about being a woman? How do I feel in my relationship? How do I feel with my children, my career, my in the world? And what comes from outside that you're actually taking on as your own thoughts, but not really in agreement with them. So have you ever been this woman? The cat is my favorite. Have you been this woman? Have you been full of rage? Have you been mad? Do you want to be this lady, which I have been, I'm sure? Or have you been this woman? Are you crying? Have you cried? Are you upset? Do you want to scream and cry on the floor? Or how about this woman? Have you been in love with life? Have you been in love with your friends? Have you had a great time? Have you been this, all of these women in one day? Maybe. And that's fine. Does this still interest you? Having a partner, having some sexy time? Or do you feel more like this? Or maybe you feel one way, one day, one the other day. This girl's my favorite. And you're feeling all the feelings. And I've had times recently where I felt most of those things in a single day. Yes, and yes, Effie says. So the reason why I'm asking you all of this is because, especially as women, and coming up in my podcast and menopause group, I'm going to be focusing the next month on emotions. And one of them is anger, because as women, we've been told to be like nice girls. And, you know, nice girls don't scream. Nice girls don't have big emotions. It's dramatic. It's all of these things, right? And knowing yourself also comes from harnessing anger, rage, frustration, and what is below all of those emotions, because anger is one of the emotions that says where we should put a boundary, or where we need to put a boundary. I don't like to say should, where we could put a boundary, because anger is us getting pushed up against, it's something we really don't like. So maybe that's a place where you're supposed to say no. And then feeling or processing sadness, loss, and grief. And maybe that's even sadness, loss, and grief about getting older, about, you know, maybe you wanted to have children and you didn't. And that is a grieving process, and to allow yourself to feel your feelings. And then even disappointment or confusion about this time, anything. Yeah, being angry means you're a bitch to many. Yeah, because men can express themselves and women are taught that, like, yeah, you're going to be a bitch. Like, don't say what you mean. You're going to be a bitch, which I don't mind being a bitch. So, so how do these three secrets, as I call them, how do they give us power? How do they allow us to harness the power of menopause? Well, Sleep allows you to be your best self. Sleep allows you to be physically, mentally, emotionally at your top functioning, right? So because, I mean, losing sleep really affects me and I can't even think. And so anything that is kind of a menopausal symptom is aggravated by being tired. And especially, like, say, the mood swings, you know, forget it. If I'm going to have a hormonal imbalance that brings me into crying or being mad or whatever, and I don't sleep, forget it. You know, I can be a little more in control of my reactions if I'm well rested. Acceptance helps you to be in a place where you're less fazed by challenges. And so less fazed by challenges of life, less fazed by challenges of menopause, like, having acceptance and curiosity about what is happening to your body and knowing that there will be changes and it doesn't have to be bad. And then being who you are, of course, allows you to be who you are, who you really are inside. Which, like I said before, maybe you haven't done that before in your life, depending on your personality and how you grew up and your marriage and things like that. So it can allow you to release expectations of others and harness your authentic truth. So I had someone ask me, like, well, what even is authentic? Because it's like a buzzword, like, oh, authenticity, it's like everyone's using it, but I think everyone's using it because it's really important. And that's the thing. She said, well, what does authentic even mean anyway? You can't even say what it is because everyone's different. And that is the point. I can only be authentic in the way that I can be and that works for me and that allows me to be my true self. And so the same for each of you. And there's such power in this of knowing yourself and deciding to be that person, whoever it is. And I just love this. The root of suffering is the giving of the fucks. Which I agree. And so then, of course, you ladies know I love me some Betty White. She's my fave. I may be a senior, but so what? I'm still hot. I mean, she's probably in her 90s when she said that. And then another amazing woman, Whoopi. She says, I mean, I'm pretty sure Whoopi never gave any fucks. I'm going to have to say that. If you hear the way she talks now, I feel like maybe she was born like that. All of a sudden, I don't mind saying to people, you know what? Get out of my life. You're not right for me. It's wonderful and liberating. And I think it's so important. And then this is Susan Sarandon, who I also love. I look forward to being older when what you look like becomes less and less an issue and what you are is the point. And I talked about this also in a recent podcast of if you're valued for your looks as a woman all the time, and then you feel like you're, losing your looks, quote unquote, then where does your value lie? And I even talked about this, my cousin, who's a professional dancer, who was my last podcast interview. She was talking about struggling with that because her body was her tool of expression, and that's where her value lied. So even that she wasn't trying to focus on her looks, her body, which doesn't work like a 20-year-old dancer, it works like a 50-year-old dancer, was changing in value in her opinion. So it's interesting to look at. Menopause is my superpower. So have you ever seen an older woman being unapologetically herself? I feel like that is where the superpower comes in. Also, the rage. I love the rage part. So thank you. So come back to the Zoom room if I can. Let's see. So yeah, ladies. So I just would like, I don't want to keep you forever. So I could talk and talk and talk, and there were thousands more Canva slides I could have shown you. But just to sort of summarize this whole masterclass, besides sleep, which, like I said, I can't put enough value on the sleep piece, and doing whatever you can to make sure that that is a priority, because especially in the United States, and I imagine in Europe and England, and it's like this badge of busy is always what we find most important. Oh, I didn't sleep because I was up working, and I woke up and I went to the gym, and then I worked so hard, and it's kind of crazy. So I would like to focus on sleep. And then this acceptance piece of accepting all of the badge of busy. Yeah, it's terrible. And accepting the changes, accepting that our faces will be different, that our bodies will be different, that our outlook on life is different. And I mean, although I would like to know now what I know, but be 20. That would be kind of nice. I mean, 20 was 20, you know? And so the more we accept where we are, the more we can say, like, hey, I have lived, 40 or 50 or however many years. And I value so much the rest of the time that I have. And it can be a fulfilling time. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the end. It's ridiculous. I'm not going to say how old my mom is today because she told me I say it too much, but she's been postmenopausal, which I'm going to find a different word for that. Been postmenopausal for a really long time, or not a really long time, a long time. And she still lives a full and awful, amazing life. She's coming to Peru for, I think, her 5th time, maybe 4th or 5th time. I'm going to make her climb some mountains in the Andes, and it can be a very fulfilling time, especially this piece of our third secret, which is being who you are, knowing who you are. Like, I didn't know who the hell I was when I was 20. And so I'm 46 now. And so knowing myself more, knowing what I want to actually say yes to, and not caring that, like, my friends are going to think it's stupid or weird or whatever the hell you think when you're 20. I don't even remember what I thought. So having that as a powerful thing that we can bring forth in the world. And then all of the symptoms of menopause are not wrapped up. Because I say I'm going to talk about symptoms of menopause, and then I always talk about the feelings of getting older. But it's because there's all wrapped up in this crap of, like, being an old lady. And so I think that's why certain cultures are not, they're not so afraid of menopause, because they're like, well, obviously getting older, it's like, we know we're getting older. It's not a big deal, but when everything becomes a big deal and that your reproductive time is the only time that's important in your life. And I've said this a million times before in different podcasts and things, but I don't have any children and I'm not going to. So if I live to be 100, does that mean there was like 100 years of worthlessness? Of course not. I do lots of stuff. I'm helping all the women with their menopause. There's lots of things I've done that doesn't depend on the nature of my reproductive being. And so I would just love to encourage that we all remember that that's a time in our life which is important. Babies are important for the world. And this time of great wisdom is also important, and having women who are knowledgeable and who can share our experiences around menopause and periods and childbirth and all the things with younger women. It's very important. So I know some of you are already past this, but would you like to go through menopause alone? Or would you, without knowing anything, with no information, with no support? Or would you like to go through this process, through this transition with someone who has investigated thoroughly the ins and outs of menopause, hormones, ideas about aging, youth, and how to be true to ourselves? Someone like me who is trained in mentoring, coaching, herbalism, yoga, biology, meditation, and women's empowerment. So you can think about what you want to do. Oh, I love more. I'm just going to say her, yes, yes, yes. I'll be 60 in February. I know who I am and don't give a damn what you think. It's very satisfying. It'll be okay, ladies. Don't worry. Well, thank you. Luckily, I kind of was, I'm from New Jersey. I was born a little bit with a no fucks left to give attitude. So I look forward to having it more. As I say about my mom, I'm never worried. My grandmother had Alzheimer's and she would yell all kinds of crazy stuff in the nursing home. And we were always so embarrassed because she was a very calm and gentle woman in the rest of her life. So it was very alarming. But I said about myself, but also my mom, that I'm not worried because she has always said what she wants. So there's no secrets are going to come out as she gets older. So if you don't mind, ladies, I would love to share my program with you. If I can screen share one more time. Next time, I don't think I'll go back and forth so much. It's a little stressful with the technology. Sorry, there's also, it's like giant fly season in Peru. So I'm like being buzzed by flies. So thank you. I don't know if you noticed that this was a video. It was very exciting. Oh my goodness. Oh no. See, just when I got confident with the technology, it somehow went back to the beginning. Okay, 1 second. So here we go. Okay. This little blue circle, it's getting to me. So announcing Menopause Bootcamp. If you get my email, which I think most of you do, you probably have already heard me announce this. This is my 6-week program of everything you need to know to reclaim and rebrand menopause. Take your body and your power back and learn to advocate for yourself in all the ways. Menopause can be a rite of passage to deep wisdom and personal power. Let me show you how. Are you ready to liberate yourself from the pressure and judgment of a youth-crazed world and be freed from the shackles of society's conditioning? Would you like to do this in a supportive community of women? Would you also love practical solutions, one-to-one support, herbal consults, meditations, yoga, journaling, breathwork, and more? Join me for the first time as I'm offering this special program and participate for an amazing, deeply discounted price. We don't need to feel like victims of our bodies or society. And this is me welcoming menopause. If you've ever seen anything of mine, I can't stop using this Julie Andrews meme. Maybe this is a little exaggerated. Maybe menopause won't be quite that fun, but here we are. So ladies, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending your time on a Sunday with me, even though I can't see any of you. I can only see, I think that's Laura, a picture of Laura. There's Abby. I always like to be off video too, because I'm always like washing the dishes and stuff when I'm listening to people's things. But so thank you so much. I hope that you found some value, even if you are postmenopausal. And if you would like to set up a discovery call with me to find out if this program would be a good fit, I also have one-to-one coaching. And as you all know, I'm an herbalist. I also do one-on-one herbal consults just separately, but that is one was included in our program. And the program is starting next Sunday. And so until Tuesday, I will be offering a very special price, which will be half the price. This program is going to be somewhere around $2,000 when I give the second round. And so if there's anyone that you would like to share this with, the replay will also be available this whole week, and then I'll take it down. So thank you so much. I see my mom and Maura saying thank you. So I appreciate you ladies coming. Thank you so much and have a wonderful Sunday. Does anyone have any questions before we go or comments? Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Abby. Bye, Tech. Thank you. Bye-bye.